Good evening, everybody. We're going to start learning. This is the first recording for the Maamar Avdi Dovid in Melukat Beis in conjunction with Project Melukat. Avdi Dovid was said by the Rebbe in Achron Shal Pesach Tafshin Mem Vav, and it was shared a year and a half later. It was edited and given out in Tafshin Mem Ches, because the Dibra Maschel, the pasuk that the Maamar is based off of, is a pasuk that is found in this week's Haftarah, the Haftarah of Parshas Vayigash. What is the nevuah? The nevuah is Hashem tells Yecheskel to take two sticks. Now again, just for some historical context, Judaism started off with one kingdom. The essential Jewish king was David HaMelech, although it began, there was Shaul, then there was Dovid, then there was Shlomo. And at that point, after Shlomo HaMelech's passing, the kingdom split into two. There became Malchus Yehuda, the Davidic dynasty continued in southern Eretz Yisrael, and in northern Eretz Yisrael there was Malchei Yisrael. Predominantly the kings were from the tribes of Yosef, specifically Ephraim, and that went until the 10 lost tribes. The northern kingdom, which consisted of 10 of the 12 tribes, they were taken into exile, and eventually this whole splintering of the Jews brought about Churban Beis Rishon. In this week's Haftarah, in this parak of Yecheskel, Hashem tells Yecheskel and Avi to take two sticks. One should have the name of Yosef and the Jews affiliated with Yosef. One stick should have the name of Yehuda and the Jews affiliated with Yehuda, and he should bring those two sticks together. And that will symbolize, and he should tell the Jews that this will symbolize that in the future, both kingdoms will no longer be splintered kingdoms. There won't be two more kingdoms for the Yidden, but they will both combine and become one kingdom. And who will be that main king when Mashiach comes? As we know, Mashiach comes from David HaMelech. The ultimate Jewish kingdom will be a kingdom under Shevet Yehuda. As the pasuk says, and this is the Dibra Maschel of the Maamar, Avdi Dovid malach aleim, v'raya echad yeh lekulam, and my servant Dovid will rule over them, and there will be one shepherd for everybody. This is the nevuah and the pasuk that the Maamar is based on. The Rebbe asks on this pasuk 3 questions. Question number 1 is, from the fact that I need a Navi to tell me that when Mashiach comes, there isn't going to be two kingdoms, but both kingdoms will combine into one kingdom, it is mashma that logically, I would have presumed maybe that Judaism would continue as two kingdoms. So I need a Navi with divine inspiration to tell me, no, don't think that there's going to be two kingdoms, they will really go back to being one. Now, that seems not so logical. First of all, for the functionality of a nation, it would make sense to have one ultimate power, one king. And even historically, the reason Judaism split into two kingdoms was always viewed as a negative thing. So historically, it wasn't a positive thing. It doesn't sound like a logical thing to have two superpowers, to have two heads of the country. That's bound for failure. So what is the logic that I would have assumed that there will be two kings, that if for this I need a Navi to tell me, don't think there's going to be two kings, there will only be one king. Why would I have thought otherwise? That's question number 1. Question number 2, why is it so simple that the ultimate king is going to be from Yehuda? Okay, there won't be two kings, as we know. They're going to end up being, the kingdoms will merge and there'll be one king again. But is it so simple that the ultimate king of Judaism will come from Yehuda? Now again, we know that the family that the kingdom was promised to was the family of David HaMelech, who did come from the tribe of Yehuda. However, it's not so clear-cut that Yehuda is the quintessential king and Yosef does not have any milas and traits of kingdom and of royalty over Yehuda. In fact, if you look at the brothers, who was king over all the other brothers? We see in this week's Parsha, Yosef was the king. Yehuda needed to subdue himself in front of Yosef to try to free Binyamin, to try to get food. Yosef dreamt of royalty and his brothers bowing down to him, and that was Mekoyim. So, first of all, when we actually look at the brothers, it seems that Yosef has the ultimate quality of kingship. And second of all, historically, when Judaism splintered, when the 12 tribes splintered into the two kingdoms, one was the kingdom of Yosef and one was the kingdom of Yehuda, which one attracted the masses more? The kingdom of Yosef actually had 10 out of the 12 tribes. Yehuda only had 2 tribes. So first of all, when you're looking at the Shvatim themselves. Second of all, when you're looking at historically, which kingdom seemingly was more popular? and more dominant, it would seem that Malchei Yisrael, that there is definitely a certain power to Yosef and a leadership quality to Yosef that Yehuda does not have. So why is it so clear cut that when there's going to be one ultimate king, that king must be from Yehuda? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is based on a klal. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, in Perek Lamed Zayin, the Alter Rebbe writes that what's going to come when Mashiach comes is a direct derivative of our actions now. All the Giluyim, the godliness and the miracles we're going to experience when Mashiach comes will all be a direct result of what we're doing now. What we do now has colossal, infinite impact. We just don't see it now, and when Mashiach comes, what we are accomplishing now will unfold and it will become open, blatant reality. And that's really what is bringing Mashiach. What we do now is what's triggering and what's pulling the strings for how Mashiach will end up unfolding to the world. So if that's true, what lesson are we meant to learn from this? That Yehuda will be the ultimate king. How do we make Yehuda the ultimate king in our lives? What does that mean to make Yehuda the ultimate king in our lives? Which will then trigger that Yehuda will be the ultimate king in reality. Because again, if my actions now affect the reality, the way it's going to be when Mashiach comes, what does it mean for me to king Yehuda in my life so that I can trigger and bring about that reality that Yehuda will be the ultimate king for the entire world? These are the 3 questions in Sif Aleph, and with these questions, these are the questions that the Rebbe starts off the Maamar with. Sif Beis, V'ha'inyan the explanation for this is, to tell what exactly is the difference between Yosef and Yehuda, spiritually speaking, we need to go to their name. As we know, a name carries the essence, carries the soul. The name is the case through which the soul enters the body. So we need to look at the name Yosef, see what it means, and look at the name Yehuda and see what it means. And based on understanding the difference of the name Yosef and the name Yehuda, we're going to understand the difference in avodah, in service of Hashem, and the difference in the character traits and rulership of Yosef versus Yehuda. Yehuda, hu miloshen haida. Yehuda comes from the language of thanking and subduing, submitting yourself. Yosef comes from the term hu miloshen haisafa. Yosef comes from the term adding to yourself and self-growth, growing. Kimaforish Bekra, as the pasuk explains regarding their names, when their mother named them. Within each person, the kayach of Yehuda, the kayach of subjugation, subduing myself towards someone else, is represented too in action, and the kayach of self-growth and expanding myself represents the intellect. Why? What's the explanation for this? I'll read and then explain as we go. Which faculty of the human being is related to submission, being mevatel myself, subduing myself in front of someone else? That is represented with the kayach of action, doing something, simply doing something. In order to do something, it takes a certain bending of my posture, as the Rebbe adds over here, both for people in general and specifically for Yidden. Let me explain this. What exactly is the difference of human beings versus every other over animals? What's the difference of animals over... there's a hierarchy of 4 degrees of life that exist on planet Earth. You have doimim, which is inanimate objects, semeach, which are growing objects like plants, vegetation. You have animals, chai, which are live, and then you have the human, medaber. What exactly is the difference between what gives semeach quality? What is the uniqueness of semeach over doimim? Semeach grows. You see much more nefesh. You see more life and vitality in vegetation than you see in inanimate objects, because inanimate objects are dead, they are what they are, and vegetation grows. That is a symptom of life. I see more nefesh in its growth. What do I see in chai, in animals, that I don't see in vegetation? They both grow, but in animal, first of all, I see over their character, instinct, and movement. I see much more soul in the raw. I see a live entity, something that is... can't really say personality, but yeah, animals are instinctive, passionate, alive. In a plant, I don't see a plant being alive. I see a growing body, which tells me that it's alive. In an animal, I see something that's alive. What's the positivity? What's the mila that you see in a human over an animal? If an animal also is alive and a human's alive, what is it that the human has unique that makes him top of the ladder, highest in this hierarchy of expression of life and neshama? What you see in the human, you see the ability to speak. You also see the ability, predominantly what you see by the human is his ability to think. Whereas the Hayom Yom of Yud Gimel Shvat says, what's the difference of man and animal? Animal walks on all fours because it can't look up, it can't wonder, it can't try to figure out meaning in life. All it is looking for how to preserve itself and to feed its natural desires. A human is able to look up, become objective. A human's mila over any other existence is his ability to have seichel, to develop his intellect. So for a human being, if that's his ultimate mila, if that's what being a human is, and especially as the Rebbe adds over here, a Jew, because a Jew is not only able to be objective, again, just we're learning this le'iyun, we're learning this in depth. What is it that a Jew has that other human beings don't necessarily have? All human beings have intellectual consciousness. They're not all stuck in their nature like an animal that can't see past themselves. All humans are able to wonder about the truths in life, meaning to try to figure out something greater than myself. By a Jew specifically, there's a certain God consciousness. A Jew has a chelek alikal mimal mamish. A Jew has a godly soul, a literal piece of God inside of him, which makes him, whether he likes it or not, much more God conscious. When a Jew is on, he feels much closer to Hashem. When a Jew is off, he feels much more angry at Hashem, but he's always God conscious. So if a human has this upwards gravity of always has the ability to understand what's right, for a human being to grow, it means to grow in experience and awareness. For me to just buckle down, to pause my internal growth, and to go do something, just follow orders, and to go do something, that is representative of bittul, of subduing myself and giving myself over, leaving my comfort zone of my internal world, the human stepping out of being human, stepping out of just being God conscious and aware, and going to do something, to follow God's orders. This is why action is a representation of subjugation, of nullifying myself in front of the will of others. You see this by, let's say, a soldier and a general. What represents that a soldier is subdued to his general? When he's listening and trying to take in his messages, or when the general tells him something, he does it. He just shuts himself down. You told me something, I'm not going to ask questions, I'm going to go do it. In action is where we see this concept of Yehuda, of Haida, of bittul, of subjugation, and of giving myself over to someone else. That is found when I'm able to leave my internal space, shut it down, and to go do something. Let's keep reading. When someone goes to do something, he's taking his desires, he's taking his intellect, and constraining them into doing a dead, dry, physical action. And for a person, and especially for a Jew, this is a yerida, this is a descent for him from his ultimate posture and his ultimate stature, where he could be. That's why for someone to go do something, it takes a certain degree of subduing myself to the divine will or to the will of others, to go step out of myself and to go do something. Similar to when the neshama comes down here. The neshama comes from a world of awareness. The neshama comes down from heaven to this world. Heaven is a world of godly awareness, of being able to experience the truth for what it is. And the neshama has to subdue itself to the will of God, to come down to the body, to come down to a world of action. Again, we're seeing this concept of when subduing myself to someone else is expressed specifically in action. Amnam inyan ha'hisafa, but what about Yosef? The concept of self-growth and expanding myself is the opposite. Ki ha'hisafa, for someone to grow, For me to feel that I'm having a growing experience in my learning, let's say. It doesn't just mean that I get what you're telling me. It means that the concept has been chewed over. It's become mine, and the concept has become mine. I could put it into my own language, and I could start applying it to new areas that haven't been taught to me. That is what Haisafa means. I hear when we hear a concept, when we learn a concept, and we're able to develop that concept to take it to push it much further. This, by the way, was one of the qualities that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to look for when he was looking for judges in the Beis Din Hagadol. To look for someone that doesn't just understand what's being told to him, but is mevin davar mitoch davar. That when he's told something, he not only understands what he's being told, but he's able to use that new awareness and new understanding to apply it to new areas and to allow that to help his mind unfold to a much greater degree than just purely based on the information that he received from you. He's able to become not just a cistern, not just a pit that could receive waters, but almost to become like a spring, that he is able to take those waters and be able to regurgitate it and create new ideas and apply that idea to other spaces. This is what growth means. This is what growth and expanding means. To be able to have the ability to intellectually and soulfully expand oneself to the greatest degree possible. This is not expressed in action. This is specifically expressed in understanding and seichel. This is ultimately what intellect is supposed to be. And this, more specifically, this is the faculty of bina.
ומובן שזהו ההפך מעניין דכפייה והידע על כרכך, כי במין המדבר בכלל, ובפרט בישראל, השכל הוא דבר מסקבל לך צריכה עד שמייסף בזה.
Specifically, this is the capability of bina. It's known that in the intellectual faculties of a person are chachma, bina, and das. Chachma, I think the best word for chachma is wondering. The ability for me to silence my mind, to try to wonder what is. To try to smuggle an idea, a wordless idea, and to try to open my eyes to truth for what it is. Before I wrap my head and develop a language for the concept. Just to have an open mind to try to understand truths of life. At some point, that hits. Before you put the language to it, the idea is in its purest form. You are right now relating to the idea not on your terms. That comes next. But I'm relating to the idea on its terms. I'm seeing the purity of the idea for what it is. Bina is when I now take that in and start regurgitating it, chewing it over until it becomes mine, as we were just explaining, and I develop my words, and I'm able to put this idea into my unique language. That is when the idea goes from being from the realm of abstract ideas, which I tapped into with my chachma, and now that's been brought down to me, and it's become part of my life perspective, my way of seeing things, and it's become, the idea has went from being an idea to my idea, and has become mine, because I've expanded it, I've opened it up and put my language towards it. This is Bina, and this specifically is the concept of Yosef, expanding intellectually, growing intellectually. And this is really the difference of Yehuda and Yosef. Yehuda represents subjugating oneself, the simple servant, which just does what he's told. That is Yehuda. Yosef is the ever-expanding, the inquisitive wonder child, who's wondering, who's trying to grow in depth, sensitivity, awareness, God awareness. Yosef is of the mind, and Yehuda is of the hands. We're going to do Sif Gimel and then take a break until next time. In Yiddishkeit, in what Jews do, this is not just the difference of the mind versus the hands, this is specifically the difference of Torah and mitzvahs. Right? We Yidden all need to learn Torah. Yidden need to do mitzvahs. And obviously the doing of the mitzvahs is synonymous with the avodah of Yehuda. And learning Torah, which uses the mind, is synonymous with the avodah of Yosef.
Let's read further into Sif Gimel. Dinyana shel Torah hu de'eresav kuchabichu kol echad. The inyan of Torah is that Torah and Hashem are one. Kadisa betanya shal yidei limud Torah ha'adam ha'lemed mis'achid im neisan Torah biyichud nifla she'en yichud kamayu v'lai ka'erkei nimtza klal. ובכל עולם של לימוד התורה, הנה על ידי הלימוד מגיע אל התורה כפי שהיא לאמיתסה ופנימיוסה בעולם זה. ומובן שכיוון שעל ידי לימוד התורה מגיעים לאילי זה, הרי יש לאדם הלימוד תענוג גשמק בדבר. Okay, what is the concept of learning Torah? Learning Torah is creating an intimate bond between the Jew and Hashem in a way that nothing else could mix. Let's give a basic example for this. If you take some solids, take a bunch of jelly beans or Myconics and mix them together, they're not becoming one body of Myconics. Each Myconic is independent from each other. They are separated as different physical bodies, and you could make a cholent, a salad out of them, but you can't turn them all into one body. Liquid, which is less stuck in its mamashos, which is less stuck in its body, when you take two liquids, you could actually turn two liquids into one liquid. But then you have intellect. If I take the way I see something and merge it with the way Hashem sees something in His Torah, Hashem sees life, tells us the way He views life. Hashem's chachma is His Torah. And if I unite my mind and try to make Hashem's way of seeing things my way of seeing things, I don't just hear it and take it in, but in a Yosef type way, that I try putting my language to it. I try really learning Le'iyun and wrapping my head fully around what I'm learning. That causes a unison. We're dealing with two spiritual, not only the mix of two liquids, which are two physical things, and I think it's even scientifically debatable if you could merge two liquids, are they really, really becoming one liquid or not? But over here, I'm dealing with intellect. I'm dealing with spirituality. And when I take my mind and blend it with Hashem's mind, I'm literally I'm bonding with Hashem in a way that nothing else but Gashmias could ever blend. Everything in Gashmias is stuck in its body. Over here, we're not dealing with something bodily. We're dealing with my mind and Hashem's mind becoming one. So Torah represents ultimate growth, ultimate reaching the highest pinnacle that a human being could reach. As the Rebbe says over here, in whatever world the Torah is being learned, it's reaching the ultimate, truest point of that world. So when a person achieves this and succeeds in this is obviously very geschmack. He has reached and achieved the ultimate. He has grown as much as a human could grow. But what about mitzvahs? Amnam inyan kima mitzvahs ubakayach asiyah dafka. Mitzvahs are just do what you're told. Do what Hashem wants you to do. Sharei kima mitzvahs ubedvarim gashmiyim. We do mitzvahs with physical objects. Udvarim shemichutz la'adam atzmai. With objects that are outside of the person. Again, limud Torah is digging deep inside my mind. Doing mitzvahs is putting on that pair of tefillin, which is outside of me, and wrapping it on my arms because that is God's will. This is nit er. It's not Him. This is not encapsulating and expressing the truest Him. This is Him. This is the man leaving himself, the Yid leaving himself to follow the will of Hashem, to step outside of himself and do a physical action with physical objects. So for a person, this means I need to shut myself down. I need to subjugate myself to be able to go engage with that outside reality. To go from my high horse, to go from my soul, from where my soul by default likes to be, and to engage the physical world. As this is brought in many Maamarim, shekayach asiyah yeshna gam bebehema sug hachai, uvekayach zeh meshtava sug hamedaber im sug hachai. The yerida zu hi aydei kfiyah v'haida, v'zeu gam ma shebemitzvahs limud Torah. Hine al pi Torah tzarich liyas chayis v'tainug geshmak b'limud Torah, v'kima mitzvahs ikrei hu aydei kabbalah sol dafka, v'ol ikrei shaykh bebehema, v'hem beis ha'inyanim di Yosef Torah v'Yehuda mitzvahs. We see this specifically, how action is doing the mitzvahs is connected with subduing oneself. Action is something, like we touched on before, where a human is no different than an animal. An animal is able to let's say we're dealing with a mitzvah of Hachnasas Kala or Halvayas Hameis, something where you just need to go run and do something. There's a mitzvah to go run and take care of something. An animal could go run that run, and a human could go run that run. Over there, I don't see any mila of the human over the animal. Whatever the human is doing doesn't involve any unique mila, anything uniquely human. It is an action that technically another animal could do. Which again goes to highlight how the human is lowering his action by default is a human silencing himself and subduing himself from being somewhere where he could technically be higher, more real, more spiritual, and to go engage something more coarse and something that is technically below the dignity of a human being to go fulfill the will of Hashem. This takes immense bittul for a human and for a Jew specifically. This difference of Torah and mitzvahs we also see in the way we're meant to engage learning Torah and in the way we're meant to engage doing mitzvahs. Learning Torah doesn't only engage the mind. How should one learn? It says, one should always learn in a place that he wants to, in a place that he enjoys. He'll learn better. In other words, learning should be done with enjoyment. It's not a bad thing. Learning is the Yosef style of Avodah, self-growth, which comes with geschmack, and it's appropriate for that to be done with enjoyment. That's when the mind will engage and work best. However, mitzvahs need to be done primarily not out of enjoyment. They need to be done out of commitment, out of kabbalas ol. Simple giving over of oneself to the will of Hashem. So not only are mitzvahs actions which represent subduing, the actual feeling of how mitzvah should be done out of a sense of subjugation towards the will of Hashem. So we see both in how you do Torah, in what limud Torah is, and kiyum mitzvahs is, and in the spirit of how one should learn Torah, which is with enjoyment and fulfillment, versus mitzvahs, which is about putting myself aside and subjugating myself. How Torah is very clearly the avodah of Yosef, growing and expanding, and how doing mitzvahs is very clearly relevant to Yehuda, which is subjugation, subduing, both in the fact that it's an action and in the fact that it's meant to be done out of a sense of kabbalas ol, subduing oneself to the will of Hashem. This concludes the first 3 sifim of the Maamar, and in the next recording, Mirz Hashem, we're going to move forward. Have a great night.